how hard is it to get classified documents out of the White House? President Joe Biden now has his own political headache over classified materials. The files from his time as vice president were discovered in his private office 6 days before the midterm elections. Reportedly, the papers contain briefings on foreign countries, including Ukraine, Iran, and the UK. Biden says that he was surprised by the revelation. His critics were quick to accuse the president of hypocrisy. Just a few months ago, Joe Biden called his predecessor Donald Trump's handling of classified materials as totally irresponsible. The former president is facing his own Justice Department probe after a historic FBI raid of his Mar-a-Lago estate found over 300 classified materials. How do the two cases compare? Can this scandal unite the divided Republican Party after its humiliating first week in control of the House? What's next for American politics?
Okay, gentlemen, let's get to it. What is next for American politics? As always, we begin with our quick fire round, 30 seconds each to lay out your initial stance on the matter, and we engage in the conversation now right after. So, Dr. Jacobson, please take the lead. Your 30 seconds are on.
Well, I'll deal with this emotionally and rationally. From an emotional standpoint, look, the Republicans are going to make a big deal about it. It looks the same. You have classified documents that were taken away. But let's look at it rationally. We're talking about 300 or more documents, including those that may have been special access programs, higher than top secret. They were demanded to be returned several times by the National Archives. Even after a subpoena, the documents weren't turned over. That's a lot different than 12 documents that were self-reported and turned over. I think it's wonderful, though, that Merrick Garland has appointed not just a U.S. attorney, but a U.S. attorney, John Lausch, who is a Trump appointee, to look into the matter with the White House, because it is serious.
Dr. Jacobson, we'll put a stop right here, and we'll continue from that point exactly in a split second. We'll just wrap up our first quick fire round. Yigal Marcus, your take?
My take is very simple. Let the hypocrisy begin. At the end of the day, we have the same exact thing happen with this president. I do believe him that he doesn't really know what happened. He doesn't remember. He doesn't recall. But aside from that, let the hypocrisy begin. The reality is this was discovered on November 2nd. Well, why didn't we know about it for 2 months? What happened to this being announced before the election when we should have known about it? So the other side's going to try to diminish it. It's not comparable. It's not the same. The reality is it's the same. It's but apparently what's good for Trump in terms of prosecution.
Okay, Marc Schulman, you know it's your cue.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's very simple. The big difference is not the number of documents and not the how secret they were. The big difference was that the moment it was discovered, the Biden lawyers told the National Archives and turned them over. The Trump hid them, tried to put it off, did everything they could to block returning the documents. That's the key difference. The Biden may have made a mistake. Trump actively tried to keep the documents, and that's the huge difference between the two cases, and they're not comparable. The Republicans will just make a big deal of it. Politically, it'll be a bit of a problem, but legally, there's no comparison between the two.
Okay, on that note, gentlemen, please feel free to interact from this point onwards. And I must ask you, maybe it's a common practice, and the only difference is that now the public is aware of it.
No, I don't think it's a common it really is not. Secret documents are secrets. I know in the world of Israel, when it comes to secrets, you can't remove a secret from a base. Everything has to be kept within the base, within the area. There's no such thing as simple. Now, of course, with politicians, it gets a little bit more complicated. I'm sure over the years, many secret documents or semi-secret documents have circulated. And today, with electronic documents, it's even more problematic. But secret is secret. And super secret is supposed to be really secret. And look, it's very easy for espionage to find secret documents if they're in the wrong place. So I don't think it's comparable, but I also don't think it's unusual. And I think in all cases, secrets have to be kept.
Dr. Jacobson, maybe it's the modus operandi. Please, Mr. Marcus. Yeah,
if I may, there's a very big difference here. One difference is President Trump versus Vice President Biden. Vice President Biden doesn't have the power to declassify. President Trump does. I'm not going to defend him, but the reality is this is comparable, and the left, the Democrats, are going to do everything in their power to diminish it, to minimize it, and to not take it seriously. This is going to be a great moment for all of us to really witness. Is the Department of Justice going to be politicized as it has been? And at the end of the day, it is very, very different and far more serious with when Vice President Biden had documents about Iran and Ukraine. We know he's got problems with Ukraine. We knew he had a very serious, let's just call it, conflicts with his son Hunter and the Ukrainian government. Finding more documents about that. Where's the raid? I think a raid now would be appropriate, but there will be no raid. In Hunter Biden's apartment, as an example. Where's the raid for that?
Dr. Jacobson,
Marcus's point first, the reason there's not a raid is the Biden team voluntarily turned the documents back over. There was no need to have a raid. I agree. I think it is wonderful to have the Department of Justice investigate. So I'm not sure what's meant by politicized by having a Trump administration appointed U.S. attorney who's already turned in their preliminary report. That's exactly how it should be done, to alleviate concerns that something like this would be politicized.
It was discovered
I do agree with my namesake that this is very, very different.
But Dr. Jacobson, I'm paraphrasing on Clausewitz here. War is a continuation of politics by other means. Are legal proceedings becoming just a tool for political reasons?
I would phrase it differently, and I agree with your general conception there. Think about the concept of lawfare that Israel's often familiar with. You can politicize anything, and there is no doubt that the GOP will start, and they already have decided they're going to start a committee to investigate any malfeasance in the Biden administration. I have no problem with that. I think Congress should always conduct effective and robust oversight of the executive branch. What I don't believe is that the GOP as a whole is going to prioritize this over some of the other issues that are coming up where they'll have disagreements with the White House.
I think the GOP has made this big story up about the Justice Department being politicized, about the FBI being politicized, the CIA being politicized, all of these more or less conservative institutions being democratically politicized organizations. They've been saying this story now for the last 4 years, and it reminds me of the story that my grandfather told me a long time ago when he talked about visiting a marketplace, and the guy down in the market said, "There's a great sale down there." He wanted to get rid of everybody. "There's a great sale down there. There's a great sale down there." And after 5 minutes, he closed his stall, and he said, "Where are you going?" "I'm going to the great sale down there." Even though it didn't ever exist, he heard it so many times, he ran and believed it himself. And that's what the GOP is all about these days. They say these lies, and then they believe it.
Let's put the stories aside for a second and focus on the facts. November 2nd, days before the election, this happened, disclosed. I completely.
Do you have any idea? Do you have any idea how long it took for the? Do you have any idea how long? Do you have any idea how long it took for the Trump story was?
Yes, gentlemen, we want to hear the both of you. Yes.
The American people had the right to know about this behavior before the election. It was held up.
The Trump story came out 6 months after the fact. Excuse me.
Why? And whether you like it or not, it stinks.
There was no
and you have to admit that. That's the reality.
No, I'm sorry. This Trump story came out 6 months after it took place because it was broken by the Washington Post. There is no reason to disclose it per se.
November 2nd, it happened.
So what?
We found out about it.
Yeah.
So what?
I want to say that I'm shocked that politics is happening in Washington.
Why was it disclosed?
Dr. Jacobson, let's allow Dr. Jacobson to chime in. Yeah.
The fact that politics are happening in Washington, really, that's shocking to us. But the second piece is there actually are DOJ policies about preserving the integrity of an investigation. If you are serious about an investigation into the former vice president, now president, then you want to preserve the integrity of that investigation by not leaking that material, by letting the U.S. attorney do what they're doing. And I think that's wonderful. Unfortunately, it was leaked.
But no matter what the Attorney General is going to decide now, he's somewhat trapped in a lose-lose situation, right?
I think this Attorney General is going to follow the evidence where it leads. Remember, John Lausch, Trump appointee, has likely already made a recommendation to Merrick Garland on whether or not This is an administrative matter, which frankly, most security violations are administrative matters. It really has to rise to a much higher level when you're dealing with some sort of criminal recommendation.
Mr. Marcus, you're probably not too envious of the Attorney General.
I think maybe we're just forgetting things here, but I do recall that shortly before the Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump election, the head of the FBI came out and disclosed an investigation that was happening into Hillary Clinton and
absolutely
her
wrong.
and whatnot.
In retrospect, it's completely wrong.
You can't have it both ways, right? They should be quiet, except they shouldn't be quiet. The reality is the people have a right to know when something like this happens. It was held back. It was not disclosed. Could it have made a difference? I don't know. That's less relevant, except that it's been 2 months. It just stinks of politicization.
Mr. Schulman.
Look, it was already said. Investigations are supposed to remain secret until they're brought to a grand jury, until they were announced. That's the reality. The fact that there were leaks in Washington, my goodness, it's a terrible thing. What would us newspaper people do without some sort of leaking taking place? We'd have nothing to write about. That's the reality.
Dog biting man or man biting dog. The day that there will not be leaks in Washington, that would be a good story. Okay, gentlemen, we still have some time left. Dr. Jacobson, I will ask you in the short time we have left to conclude our first time of the debate. Can Biden get out of it legally?
I'm not even sure there's going to be a legal issue here. That remains to be seen.
Okay.
I also think that President Biden, if there is some sort of if the Department of Justice says, look, the laws may have been broken here, I think this president is just going to move along with what the Attorney General says needs to be done. I believe this was done under the special counsel statute in terms of getting Lausch involved. So the White House won't have much say. But I'm not even sure this is going to rise to a level of more than an administrative mistake.
And legally, will it have an impact on the Mar-a-Lago affair? Again, in the 20 seconds we have left?
Politically, not legally.
No, politically, we will be talking after the break. Legally?
No.
Okay. On that note, gentlemen, the three Marks, Mr. Marcus, Marc Schulman, and Dr. Marc Jacobson, you're staying with us. We're taking a short break, and when we're back, we unpack the political fallout.
Well, look, the reality is the Republicans, I agree with him, are fairly united. They're planning to have, months of hearings on ridiculous things like the Hunter Biden story. There's very little is going to take place in the Congress in the next 2 years. That's very clear. The only thing that might happen is President Biden just came out with a Wall Street Journal editorial calling for tech reform and calling for laws to do that, and that might happen. But I don't see anything happening in Congress regardless.
Okay, Dr. Jacobson, your thoughts?
Yeah, let me play both sides here. I think, look, there's going to be investigations into this, and I don't necessarily have a problem with it if they're done in a way where there's integrity about it. But the problem for the GOP is then the same arguments are going to have to apply to Trump and any other extremists in the GOP who may have violated the law, whether it's with documents, whether it's on January 6th. Again, it's going to be difficult for them. I think where the GOP is going to have a bigger problem in terms of staying united is Ukraine, where you already have a significant number of members saying there will be no more blank check, including Speaker McCarthy. And then you're going to have a huge fight over defaulting on the national debt. That's where I think you're really going to see a divide, not necessarily over the Biden document issue.
Okay, let's go back to Mr. Marcus. You've missed it. I'm not sure if you did, but in either way, Marc Schulman agreed with you.
Wow. Surprising. There's a lot more that unites our party than divides it. We're not a divided party at all, but what we are, we have a lot of challenges that we have to work on for the American people. And we've got a budget disaster that we have to figure out. We've got way too much spending. We've got a lot of priorities that have to be worked out, and we have to investigate. Unfortunately, we have to investigate what this president has done and what Hunter Biden has done. And so we've got our hands full. The day it's about the American people and getting finally a House of Representatives to work for the people.
Okay, gentlemen, please feel free to interact. Is this a Deus ex machina moment for Trump? Is this what he was waiting for?
Yeah, this is actually, in a lot of ways, spelling the end of Trump. This is now about the post-Trump, not post-MAGA, but post-Trump era. I mean, you now have the Republicans, and I'd be curious as what Marcus has to say about this, about to talk about spending, and meanwhile, you have them arguing over a defense budget. This is not Reagan's Republican Party. This is a Republican Party that is more revolutionary than anything else and wants to overthrow the current way of conservatives thinking about national defense, relationships with Russia, about the only thing that's consistent is China, and that's probably a good thing for all of us as Americans, whether Republican or Democrat or independent.
Well, it's about accountability, right? It's no longer about a blank check. I think that at the end of the day, we need to be accountable to the American people. I think we need oversight. I think we actually need the House to work the way it always supposed to, but hasn't for 20 years or actually longer than that.
Then why were Republicans against the January 6th commission if they're for oversight?
Because it was politicized. That's why. Because
Liz
it was
Cheney,
politicized.
Adam Kinzinger, not big Dems.
Yeah, absolutely.
No, but they voted. Excuse me, the Republicans voted. They voted against a national commission. Forget the commission that ended up happening. It was supposed to be a national commission like the 9/11 commission. What? No, excuse me. Before it was politicized. No, before it was politicized. The idea was to create a 9/11 style commission that was equal Republican and Democratic and not political. But the Republicans voted it down because they didn't want the results of it to come out, and they wanted to politicize it and say it was political. I'm sorry, that's not what happened. There was supposed to be a national commission, but they were against
Mark's
it.
Right, and this did happen for Afghanistan, which of course should be investigated, including the failures of the Biden administration. But that would have been the way to do it, to depoliticize. But again, that's unfortunately right. The GOP did vote against that.
Look, the biggest problem, the biggest irony, of course, is
we absolutely did. But at the end of the day, you have to ask the question why. And it's not because we were afraid of the results, because almost all of our leaders came out and condemned that day immediately.
The issue except the ones that are now in Congress, but okay.
Politicization of the process. That's the problem, and it's been an ongoing problem. It's not something that's going to be easily solved. But at the end of the day, that's
the biggest irony is the Republicans talking about deficit, and the first thing they do is to vote to decrease the budget of the IRS. I mean, that is the most absurd thing I've ever heard of. You concerned about the budget deficit? Let's collect less money.
Why? Hiring 87,000 new agents in an institution that there too was politicized. Just go through the data and you'll realize that what we've done, what the Democrats have done, is funded and yet another arm of their party to go after conservative organizations. That has to stop. We don't need more government. We don't need
Marcus,
Democrat
I can
government.
tell you, as someone who worked on nonprofit boards for some Democratic-leaning organizations, that was a problem the IRS had across the board. And there's nothing wrong with oversight or changing that. But what we're talking about is preventing the very arm that allows us to bring in income from doing their jobs.
Gentlemen, we want to hear all of you. It's difficult when you all speak at the same time. We don't have much time left, but I do want us to talk just a tiny bit on the Democratic Party. Will Democrats turn their back on Biden, or is he safe for the time being in terms of inter-party support?
I think as long as he decides to run, they will support him because he's been a very successful president. By all means, by all counts, he's been successful. However, Democrats would prefer someone younger.
I hope you have a glass of
that's the issue.
Bring it on. I would really, really like President Joe Biden to run again. I would love that. We would love that. The American people would love that and make it a very easy election.
Okay, we're nearing the end of our discussion. Dr. Jacobson, where are we heading next? Is Filegate going to be at the center of attention or just until the next news cycle?
Oh, I think just till the next news cycle. I think, again, the budget ceiling is going to be the story of 2023. God forbid we default on something like that. I also think that we're only 18 months away from being deep into the 2024 election, really only 12 months away once we see if we see a Republican and/or Democratic primary.
I also think Ukraine. I would go back to what was said earlier. Ukraine is going to be the big issue and the big divide in the Republican Party.
Yes,
because that's falling off. Support amongst the Republicans, they've become the pro-Putin party. At least some of them have become, and that's really sad to see.